Video we looked at the similarities between using a subtractor or any other synthesizer in relation to using the NN19, but particularly the links between how these controls fit together. Now you can obviously go and find lots of different samples by going into your browse patch area there. One thing to notice is when you put things at a certain place in Reason, it will actually tell you what it is. Which is very useful. So we want to browse patch just for the second. Let's go and just play with this different guitars. Let's try a nylon string guitar. Okay, or a tremolo acoustic guitar. Okay, very spy theme. Okay, so that's loaded in this sound. Now, obviously, all these controls we talked about before, you can use to manipulate this sound that's in here. If I wanted a bit of vibrato, for instance, I could use my LFO to make it even more. Okay. Okay, even more tremolo-y than it already is. That kind of hammer-on effect. Okay, I could use the filter, change the sound. Okay, I could change octaves, tuning, so on. Change the attack time. Okay. Make it a really short, muted sound. Okay, by reducing the decay and sustain. So lots of things you can do with the actual sounds you're putting in. But what you probably want to do a lot of the time is use your own samples within this sampler. Now before you do this, it's kind of essential that you actually initialize the patch the same way you would in the subtractor if you were trying to put your own sounds into it. So we initialize the patch, which means that we now get nothing. You can see that the keyboard's working, but there's nothing going through this. Now this is browse patch, and if we come over here we can browse samples. Don't get these two confused, because if you're trying to load in a sample and you go to browse patch, you won't be able to find individual samples. If we go into browse sample, you'll see that the acoustic guitar we just had is now split up into the different regions that it goes across the sampler. Just to show you that, if I go in and load the acoustic guitar back up again, there we go. You'll see that there are sections across here that the notes have been sent to. That's because when you sample stuff, you don't want to just sample one note. You need to sample notes across the guitar and then map them to the keyboard. That's part of the sampling process. Okay, so this allows you to do that by setting up these areas here, which is what we're going to look at in a second when we put our own samples in. Okay, so just a reminder, make sure you initialize the patch before you go to your sample bank. Okay, we can just browse a sample and choose any sample we want. Now, I'm going to go to the desktop, which is where my samples are. I'm going to dubstep one, and I'm going to flick through these, and I'm going to use that bad boy one. Okay. Now, once you put this into the sampler, you'll notice that the note I'm pressing at the moment is the same pitch as the sample. Now, but I could play it down the keyboard, okay, or up the keyboard. It's been mapped across the keyboard. Now, the note that it's actually been mapped to in terms of pitch is C3. So if you press C3 on the keyboard, you get the sample as it should sound. Okay. If you start to press the notes up the keyboard, it gets faster, and also it goes up in pitch, but also the sound gets faster. If you go down the keyboard, it gets lower in pitch, but slows down. Okay. Okay. So it's good to know where the actual sound is going to, and it's being mapped to C3 here, which you can tell it's being highlighted by these little dots as well. Okay, now I'm going to initialize it again, and I'm going to show you something that I want you to be able to do, which is really useful. Now, if you press Alt on your keyboard, it will put, and you need to go up above this blue line, not on the blue line, but up above it, okay? If you go on the blue line, you get a little speaker, which means it'll play the sample. We need to go above it and make a little handle. So you press Alt, keep it pressed down, and then you select the handle. Okay, I just want this to be on C, so I'm going to go right next to it and put another handle up there. Now you can see that the low key here is C3 and the high key is C3. Now if I move those, that's another way of making and moving my handles. Okay, I can go to those. Now at the moment it says there's no sample in here, so there's no sample being put in here. We're going to go back and get that bad boy sample. Okay, there we go. Now you can see that that's been mapped by this root note to C3. Now if I start to move it around, okay, that messes up the actual pitch that I want it to be on. So for this, from this point of view, when you want to load the samples in and put it to a specific place, you need to have the low key and high key on the note and also the root on the note. Right, I want to load another sample in because I want to load a section of samples in here. So again, I'm going to go back to my Alt key, I'm going to press it and I'm going to put this one on C sharp. You can see no sample in here again. So we're going to go back to our sample thing. I'm going to choose another one. Okay, so now I've got one on C and one on C sharp. Okay, the one on C sharp though is not the right pitch now because it's routed to C and I've already got my other sample on C. So what I need to do is change the root note of that sample to C sharp. Okay, and now it's the correct pitch. Okay. Okay, then I'm going to go and make another handle. And I'm going to go back and find another sample. We'll just have this swelly bass sound. Okay. And now again, that's on D. Now my root key needs to go to D3. Okay. Now that's correct as well. Okay, and I'm just going to load a couple more in. Alt, make another handle, then get another one. I'll have this one, kick drum, and then I'm going to put that root to D sharp. Okay, and I'm going to put in another one, and I'm going to do that. And then you've guessed it, I've got to take my root note to E3. Okay, so now if I flick through these, you'll see that bad boy sample is on C, C3. Okay, you'll see the bad man sample is on C sharp. You'll see the bass sample is on D3. And you'll see the other sound that we've got there, I think it's a kick drum, is on D sharp 3. And then you've got this other impact kind of sound on E3. Okay, so I can play them on the keyboard and they're all the right pitch. And I can do anything I want rhythmically with those. Now remember, when we come back to using these as MIDI notes, which you can trigger from your keyboard by programming them down here, this is going to become quite useful. Okay, so let's just have a little look at a few more of the features of what happens when you do these. You've got a level control here, which controls the level of the sample. Okay, how loud you want it to be. It goes from 0 to 127, default's 100. Okay, I can also make it loop forward or make it loop forwards and backwards. Okay, so forwards in a loop or forwards and backwards in a loop. Okay, I can switch to the samples here and trigger them all off the same note if I want to. Okay, but they're going to change pitch. I can change the low, high and high key. So say I wanted to add a few more notes at the bottom, so I wanted to be able to play that one within an octave. I could change the length of that. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back up again so it's just on the C note. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.